Welcome, Tina Robinson. I'm so happy that you're joining me today for this interview.
Cool.
It's a pleasure to have you. This is actually the first interview I'm doing in the series that's going to be called Changing the Narrative. All stories about women that are kind of breaking through the traditional or even stereotypical image we have of women.
Right.
And so I'm very happy to have you here because you have quite the CV. Like, you have so much experience, over 30 years of experience in film and theater, but in many different fields, right? So you
Right.
have, like, I'm sorry, I'm just going to read it now because I
Sure.
can't
No, it's
memorize the whole thing.
fine.
That's acting, singing,
Mm.
stage combat, fight choreography, stunts, voice work, teamwork, and movement. So it's a
Mhm.
whole lot of things you do. And I know you also work with horses.
Yeah.
Um, and so, as a fellow martial artist, I'm going to be
Yeah.
probably focusing more on your work as a stunt woman and stunt coordinator, because I think that's
Mm.
very, very interesting. I don't know if do you want to add something yourself to kind of introduce yourself and what you've been working with?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny to hear what you read up because I am a trained actress, and I mean, when I went to drama school in London, it was just a part of the curriculum to learn stage fighting. And when I came to Denmark to study physical physical theater, um, I saw that nobody was really doing it in Denmark, the stage fighting. So I started to teach, and I had no intention whatsoever that it should take over my life the way it has, and that turn, especially because when I started working with the stuntmen here, I was told out of love. I mean, it wasn't, trying to hold me back. It was just somebody being realistic. A man told me, Tina, you're going to have to be twice as good just to prove you're just as good. And I really didn't believe him. I thought, where'd that come from? I hadn't met that before I came to Denmark. So yeah,
And where
and
are
it
you
has been
from?
true.
Tina,
I'm
where are
from
you from?
California. I'm from California, Northern California, not Southern California.
And
So
how
I'm
did
not
you
from
end
Hollywood.
up in Denmark then?
Well, it was really because of wanting to study physical theater. When I got
Mm.
done with my BA in dramatic arts, I decided I wasn't quite done. I went to London for a year, and then took a year and a half off, and then came back to Denmark. And I was going to be here 1 year, and it's been over 30 now.
Oh,
You
wow.
never know. You never know.
It's
Yeah.
true. And I'm the
Yeah.
opposite because I'm the Danish that went to Spain and I stayed here. Well, I'm on my 16th year now.
Wow.
So it's a long
Okay.
time. Yeah.
It is, and time it just
Flies.
flies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
completely. But tell me, I mean, I'm really interested in hearing maybe some of the challenges you've already touched upon.
Mm.
What you were told instantly when you wanted to work with stunt as a woman. What are the types of challenges that you've met, kind of
Mm.
based on your gender, working as a
Right.
stunt choreography and working with fighting and staging fighting?
Mm. Well, I found it difficult I was teaching the stuntmen here, professional stuntmen here, in weaponry. That's my specialty, is weapons and fencing based on historical fencing, but it's also stage fighting. So it is choreographed. And so it's done in a safe way, different techniques. And I found that my male students were getting the jobs of choreographing, and it's like, I have 3-4 years more experience than them at least, and I just didn't understand it. And then I caught myself once. I heard of a woman who came to Denmark. I don't think I ever met her actually, but she came to Denmark and she did stage fighting. And my immediate thought was that she wasn't very good. I
Yeah.
didn't even know her, but it was like, oh, she's a woman, she can't be that good. Where'd that thought come from? I mean, I would call myself, but that. So okay, all right, we have to change this. So that was one thing, and then I went to the weapons museum here Museet. It's called the War Museum now.
Mm.
And I just said, hey, I'm an actress and I do stage fighting. And I was taught by the man who, John Waller, who did all the stuff at Leeds, at the Tower of London. He did the entertainment there with stage fighting and stuff. And they said, yay, we've been looking for somebody. And you're American, you're a woman. That's kind of interesting, you know. That, well, no, you'll be professional. So they hired me. And then I got fired for the same reason 2 years later, that I
What?
was a woman and it was historically incorrect. And they
Okay.
couldn't have that as a museum. I was devastated. I was devastated because I had heard of a few women, you know, Joan of Arc. Everybody's heard of, almost everyone has heard of her. And Bonnie Pirate and Madame Maupin, a woman from France. But that's about it as far. And the Amazons, you know, you've kind of
Yeah.
heard of the myth of the Amazons, yeah. So I just thought, it can't be right. And while I was there, I kept getting comments because my fight team was all women as in the beginning as well. And that was only because they were the ones that stuck with me and to teach, you know, I was teaching them and training them and stuck with me, and we started developing shows and stuff. And then another woman I went to school with here, physical therapy, theater. I just came back from physical therapy. I think
That's why
why.
you have it.
It's got in the brain. Anyway, so it just happened to be women. And of course we got the comments from some of these guys, especially from these collectors who collect weapons, and oh, it must be heavy, and it's unusual that it's a woman. And I mean, we had dresses on as well, and so I didn't think so much about it. And while I was here in Denmark, I went back and forth to the States to train, to certify, get advanced certification, teacher certification, because there was nobody else. All my teachers were men. And I remember the first time I was on this really big international workshop in Las Vegas. It's 3 weeks long. It's a big deal in stage fighting. I was getting my advanced certification. And I just remember one of my teachers saying, you know, it's great to see you move, because you move like a woman. You fight like a woman. And all the other women before you tried to fight like men.
Yeah.
And I was, no, that's kind of weird. I'm just myself. I never thought about it, right?
Yeah.
But the characters that I created during, because you get fight choreography and then you have to put a scene and characters on the fight. And I remember one of my scenes was Frankenstein against a ballerina. So I was doing ballerina moves with a little floret, you know, a little small sword. And another scene was Trixie, the broadsword babe. And I came in chewing gum,
Yeah.
with my broadswords dragging behind me and and fighting Captain Kirk. And so, I mean, we're just having fun with it. I never thought about it. Until I started to work professionally in Denmark, and then kept
But
needing it.
yeah, sorry, I'm interrupting you, but it's so funny what you just said now, because you know, that comment about fighting, you fight like a woman, and we all have, especially in English, right? There is this saying of you fight like a girl, or fight like a girl
Yeah,
is supposedly
very
something bad,
negative.
right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's something that you would say to someone to insult them. And there are loads of these loads of
yeah,
these sayings that we have in our language that are, you know, part of this whole indoctrination, I think, from our society, that makes even you and I, who are very aware of this and, you know,
mm-hmm.
trying to change things, but still we fall into our own trap, right? And you were just
Yeah,
commenting on how you saw a woman and you think,
yeah,
and that just proves how indoctrinated we all are. And I think language has a lot to do with it as well. So it's
very
like
much so.
trying to
Yeah.
break those images
Yes.
and change that. Well,
Yeah.
and that's what you're doing, right? Because you're proving that women
Oh
can
yeah.
fight, and they can fight their own way, and that can be the good way as well.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. So I started a Nordic Stage Fight Society. I started teaching in Sweden, and so we had people from Norway and Sweden and Denmark coming. And I had teachers coming from the States who came
Mhm.
over to teach. I wasn't certified in teaching yet, but I was teaching, but not certified. So we had to certify my male teachers, fight masters. There isn't even a fight mistress title, it's fight masters.
Yeah.
And it was great. We started the Nordic Stage Fight Society, and we can boast that we have and have always had more women in our society than any other stage fight society in the world. We also had the first female presidents, and
Oh wow.
several of them. Yeah. And I know that in the States, with the Society of American Fight Directors, they had a vice president that was a woman at one point, long time ago. And that's about it. But most of the women that were in my generation of training up in the stage fighting quit because it was
Mhm.
just too hard, and they had kids or whatever. I didn't have children, so that helped, I think, maybe to keep me going. But I mean, we have Inga-Liva Tipperson in Norway, who I will never forget. She was president, and she came to one of the big workshops in Norway, and she had a little baby under her arm, and welcoming everybody, and it was just like the most natural thing in the world. So then
Yeah.
her child, and oh yes, when I first met her on the very first workshop, she was nursing a
Wow.
baby
Yeah.
while still doing the workshop. So
Yeah.
yeah, she was such an inspiration. Yeah. So
That's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, and that's again one of those images that we have to change, right? That say it's okay, and it's okay. There's a mom, and she has to bring her
mhm,
child. And I know in the film business, it's also something that people are starting to look at now, right? Like
yeah,
bringing your child on set, or
right.
even like film festivals are starting to look into how can we accommodate moms with little
Yeah.
toddlers or babies so that they can come on the festival and they can join
Mhm.
the meetings, and maybe someone will take care of their child at the same time, or
Exactly.
just start to look at these things to make it easier for women to be available and
Yeah.
be on working in the same way as men and
Yeah.
with the same
Yeah.
opportunities as men.
Mm. Yeah.
And so I'm also interested in hearing, because I know that at some point you started looking into what you talked about before about the women warriors,
Warriors.
right? It's something
Yes.
that you've started to investigate into.
I did. That was actually, I really, it was in 2008 where it really took off. I started to sort of investigate what I could find at the time. We're talking 1996, I think. I was fired in 1995, somewhere around there, from the museum, and I still kept working. I mean, I was told you're a good fighter, maybe not with the great, medieval stuff with the broadswords. You should stick
Yeah.
to the rapier and dagger and more elegant stuff. Like, don't
But did
tell
they
me what to fight
actually
with.
did they actually tell you like you're fired because you're a woman, because we
Yes,
don't? Okay, wow.
yes, yes. Yeah, yeah. It was one inspector in particular that
And what did you
was
think
my.
when when they told you that? How did you
Well,
feel when you
I
got?
was I was in costume ready to go on, and it was on
Really?
stage. We were working with these other people who were on horseback. I wasn't riding at the time, and I was doing the fighting. And I had a couple women and another guy, and we were ready to go on. It was the second day or third day, and he just came and said, "You're fired."
Wow.
And I was, I mean, I burst into tears, and he was like, he didn't quite know what to do. And that's when he started saying, well, stick to the, rapier and dagger. And I'm going to, they're going to do a film about Christian the Fourth. And I'm going to tell them about you. And it's like, this is not making it better.
No.
You're firing me because I'm a woman, you
Yeah.
know? And I just thought about all the times when stunt men were doing stunts for women
Yeah.
and dressing up as women, why can't a woman dress up as a man?
Yeah.
I felt so naive at that time in my life, just because I just kept getting these slaps in the face of like, why can't I just be myself? Why can't I just do what, you know? I was encouraged to keep doing the stage fighting by my fight teacher in London, my first one. He said, you have talent for this. You should do it. And then so it really, really took me aback. But I was getting some fight choreography work in theaters. So, but
And
it
then you
just,
started looking into the women warrior at that point?
I
Was that when you
did,
kind of...
I did. But another thing happened at that point too, is that like a year or two before that, I started to remember my childhood and all these bad memories were coming up. So I really was lost I had no confidence in myself and was fighting just to keep myself, my head above water. So it was really at a bad time in my life, really dark time in my life. So I think that's why it took me so long till 2008 to really, okay, now we're going to do something about the women. And then I got a hold of a book. There wasn't much online, so I had to order some books. And I read this book by Janine Davis Kimball. And she's an archaeologist, was an archaeologist. And she was on an archaeological dig in the Ural steppes, and her thing was art. But she started to question every time that they opened a grave with a skeleton in it. If there was a weapon there, it was automatically a man. They didn't even check the pelvis. That's how they check if it's a man or a woman.
Yeah.
And she said, well, why are there earrings there and a mirror and, you know, and they went, oh yeah, you're right. So they went back and they found out that at least a third of the skeletons were women with weapons.
Oh, wow.
And that spurred her on to start researching women warriors. And that book, I was furious. All this anger just started coming up. Why have we not heard about these women?
Yeah.
Thousands of women, every culture, every time. I mean, it was just mind-boggling for me. It opened up my whole world, and I cried with rage and stuff. And I was trying to tell my husband about these women, and he's like, "Are you sure?" It's like, oh my God. I had to go for a walk one night because I was ready to strangle him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then I realized too that, okay, if I'm going to take this on, this is what I'm going to come up against. This is a man who loves me, you know, and says it out of, you know, he's not trying to hurt me. He's just, you know, being a man, I guess. But even women too, you know, have questioned it, but not in the same way. Some men feel threatened.
Mm-hmm.
And
They get more defensive.
yeah, they get more defensive. Yeah.
Yeah.
And try to say, there's no way. It's all myth, you know. So, but there is so much evidence now.
And so what does your work consist in? Are you just kind of investigating as a hobby? Are you doing something with it? Are you...
I am, at this point, I'm writing a book.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, writing a book. I have written articles about it, about the subject, and reading more. But I was just recently operated. That's why I have to go to physical therapy. I got breast cancer. And
I'm very
so, yeah, and I feel like in Amazon, the myth, because the myth of the Amazons is that they cut off their breast so that they could better use the bow and arrow. I'll tell you right now, no way.
No.
They would not cut off their breast. No, way too much rehabilitation there. But anyway, it gave me sort of an insight into fighting and stuff. But anyway, I'm getting off the track. So what I wanted to do now, I decided I want to do a documentary. So I'm going to do a documentary about my rehabilitation because I want to research women's ways of fighting.
Right.
I have colleagues in the States and England that are researching how men fight. Well, they say people, but if you look in all the books, it's all men.
Yeah.
Because men wrote the books. We don't have a woman historian before 1700s and 1800s. Yes. So Before that, it's all men that have written them down and drawn pictures and all that we know of. Unless they were women dressed as men, you never know.
Yeah.
But so I want to research women, how they fought, and I want to make that a part of my rehabilitation because I want to be able to
Wow.
fight again. It's been 9 weeks now since my operation, so I'm
Oh, so it's
getting
fairly
there.
new.
It's fairly new,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yes.
how do you feel?
Tired. That's the fatigue, and that's why I think nobody would want to do that willingly.
Yeah.
Cut off their breast, and I have a frozen shoulder, so this is going to be a challenge.
Oh,
Yeah, because apparently the way that they operate, they put your arm back, and my shoulder is frozen.
oh wow.
And yeah, so so we'll see how this documentary goes. But I want to do. Also want to do film or maybe a TV series or something on these women because they
Yeah.
have fascinating stories, and I think that it gives women and men a whole different way of looking at women.
Of course. That's what it's all about, right?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
about
I
like,
suddenly, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, but it's about the entire society, both men and women and everything in between. Uh the image we have of what we're capable of doing.
Mm,
One thing is that for so many years, women have been oppressed and told that you are like this, or you're weak,
mhm,
or you're not good enough, or you're not strong enough, or women are better at being at home with the kids, and they just do those
mhm,
tasks better than men. Things like that that just makes no sense at all. I
mm,
can tell you, I'm a much better fighter than I am at sewing. That's for sure.
you
I've
do.
been fighting my whole life. Like, I've trained martial
Yeah.
arts since I was 11, and that's what I do well, and that's what I love, and that's my passion. And I have no interest in sewing or any other like stereotypical tasks that women would do
No.
in how at home and in the house. So it's really about kind of breaking with those images and just let anyone, regardless of your gender or
Mhm.
sexuality, nationality, culture, whatever, let
Yeah.
anyone be able to do anything they want, and I
Exactly.
think that's the message we want to give to especially little girls that are growing up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because what about
Exactly.
that? I'm thinking about role models. Like, for you, how have
Mm.
that been? Because you haven't really had any role models to look up
No.
to, right?
No.
And me as a film director, I've had very, very few role models, female role models to look up to,
Mm.
um, as I was trying to form my career and, going to
Mm.
film school and wanting to make films. And a big part of my a, a big part of my life, I've been focused on writing stories and doing films about men. And it's only about a couple of years ago that I all of a sudden thought about the films that I made, and I thought, they're all about men. They all have
Interesting.
male main characters. I have
Mm.
done a couple of films that have maybe, both a woman and a man, but I've never until that point done a film that was about a woman with a female protagonist.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And then I thought, well, why is that? It makes no
Yeah.
sense. Why would I write stories about men when I'm a woman, when it makes more sense to write about what you know?
No, right? Yeah.
And I just realized that it's all because, what you've been used to seeing on screen your whole life and what you have identified with your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And those have been male characters. And when I think about protagonists in stories that are, you know, um, go-getters, that will go out and fight, that will, take action and save the world, and interesting roles that are all male. And I'm sure, I mean,
Exactly.
of course, we can find some films with female protagonists as well, but
Yeah.
the amount compared to the male
Male.
protagonists we have are just, it can't be compared. So I
Mm.
realized that I had really been influenced and almost like, I wouldn't say brainwashed because that's not what it's about, but it's just that thing of, that is what I see on screen. That is what attracts me. That is what I've seen all my life. So I'm automatically going to somehow imitate that.
Right.
And it wasn't
Exactly.
until I really sat down and reflected on this and said, that
Mm.
has to stop. I can make movies about men, no problem. But I want to also make films about women. And so I took like a, um, a choice at that point that I wanted to start doing films. And since then, I've tried to focus more on female characters. And it's been wonderful actually for me, because it's been somehow much easier to
I
connect
was
with
going
that.
to ask you that if it was easier. Yeah.
Yeah, of course, because you know that character better and you understand that character better. And it started also making me think, wow, all these men that are writing about women and that are telling stories about women, but from their point of view.
Yeah.
And I can say the same thing because I've been writing about men.
Right.
Um, and I'm not saying that we should never make films about other genders or about other cultures, or no, of course. Um, if you do a proper research and investigate a theme, I think you can make a film about anything.
Right.
But how interesting is it to make a film about the stuff that you really know? And
Yeah.
that's so honest and true, and
Yeah.
much more interesting for an audience.
Yeah.
So that was my experience in this, and it was a little bit the same of what you're talking about, of who do you identify with, and where's
Right.
your role model?
Exactly. Well, I was thinking about it too. Like as a child, I mean, I was not a fighter. I was extremely shy, and my heroes were Spider-Man and Zorro.
Oh,
I do wire stunts and I do fighting fencing now.
yeah, yeah,
So there you go,
yeah.
But we had Wonder Woman at that point. She had been there for a while, but I'd never really identified with her.
Mm.
Maybe because she was a woman, I was a girl. I don't know. I just didn't think about it. I didn't think about those genders. I had three sisters, so we didn't have any brothers, so we didn't have anything to compare with, really. But I was mainly had male, boys as friends, not girls. And
Mm.
when I went off to college and university, I was like, I am never going to go be in a women's college. I was so sick of girls. It's like,
Yeah.
and I ended up at a women's college in the end,
Oh,
which
did
is
you?
really good. Yeah, Mills College in Oakland. And it started as a finishing school for girls, but now it's an Ivy League school with Harvard and all that. That's that. But anyway, it helped me. I think that's what got me into the feminist movement. But I
Mm.
don't consider myself a feminist. I'm just doing what I feel
But why
I'm right
not?
at.
But why not? Because I hear a lot of women saying that, like, I don't consider myself a feminist, but a feminist, like, feminism really is just about equality. So it's just about,
Yeah, because it's such a negative connotation with it.
yeah,
Oh, you're such a feminist. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, okay. Why
exactly.
should it
It
be so
has
negative?
that's another it's another image, or it's another narrative that I would like to change, and
Yeah,
this thing of feminism being something that you have to be almost ashamed of, or it's a
yeah,
certain type of women who are feminists, usually very extreme. And when really, if you look up the word feminism, it's all about just wanting equal rights for everyone,
yeah,
not
yeah.
just for women, for men as well. So if you believe in human rights and if you believe
Right.
in equality for all human beings, then everyone is equal.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
men can be feminist as well. So
Mm.
and I think, I mean, again, it's something that has been created in our society. This negative tone of the word, or we've
Right.
attached this negativity to the word, when really it's a beautiful and good word. Obviously you can have all kinds of feminists, and I don't agree with all feminists. Some of
No.
them are extremely extreme,
Man
and they,
haters.
yeah, man haters, and
Mm.
and that's not at all what I'm about. But you have
No.
that within all sorts of groups, or
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I mean, there are always going to be people who are extreme to one side or the other, and
Mm.
that might not be the best way to go. But in
Mm.
general, I think we should all be proud of being feminists.
Definitely. Now, let's go back to ancient times
Yeah.
with the word Amazons.
Yeah.
What kind of image do you get when you hear of Amazons? What do you get?
Well, I actually know very little about
Mm,
Amazons, and the
mm,
only thing I have is this like warrior woman,
mm.
right? But
Right.
it's always the image is always kind of a sexy image, like kind of Wonder
Right.
Woman with very little clothes on, and
Yep.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's the image I have.
Yeah. Okay. So when I started to write my first article, I thought, okay, there's so many women. So let's start with the Amazons because I was really curious. Have they existed?
Mm-hmm.
Is there evidence? Up until now, there's not really any evidence. I think last year they found some grave sites where the male skeletons were buried with children and the women were buried with their weapons. So
Oh,
that could show some sort of society where it was matriarchal, right?
yeah.
But there were still men in the society. It wasn't all women. Anyway, so back in the time when the Greeks created, this is the theory amongst archaeologists, one of the theories, and I think this is true, the Greeks they went to war and they met with some really good, formidable opponents. And when they found out that half of them were women that they were up against, and they were really good, they were the Cimmerians from the Black Sea area around where Turkey is. And anyway, so at that point, their women were very oppressed. Once they got married, they weren't allowed out of the house. They were supposed to be very demure and very quiet and feminine.
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, so when they met these women, I think they were attracted to them kind of sexually and erotically or whatever. They thought, wow, this is cool, but our women cannot want this.
Yeah.
So they created these monstrous kind of women. If you let yourself be wild like these women, you will kill your male babies, you will hate men, you will cut off your breast, you will, just be wild and wanton and all this stuff. And everything that these women, the stories that they tell about the Amazons, they're incredible. And that you can see that they admired them, but they were all ending tragically.
Mm.
So if you become like this, yeah, it might be fun, but for a while, but you're going to end tragically. And any man that gets involved with this woman, same thing.
Yeah.
And they've even written about how they disappeared because they tried to attack Athens. They tried to get revenge on Athens, and they were just demolished. And so, yeah, those wanton women, they got what they deserved. Yeah, and
But
so the word Amazon at that point really was negative.
mm,
Nowadays, it's like, wow, I want to be an Amazon, right?
yeah,
It's a positive thing. So
yeah,
that narrative has changed in a way,
yeah,
which is interesting. Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's how we do change narratives, right? It's by going
Mm,
back and investigating and bringing out the truth and looking into
exactly.
history and finding the facts and
Yes.
setting the story straight,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And just,
It's,
myths and mythology, it's all good, and they can be nice stories, but if they're created in a way to create a negative image of half of the population, then
yeah.
I don't think it's so healthy, and I don't think it's so good, and I do think that
No.
it's something that we should set straight. And
Yes.
um
Yeah. Here's another little story of the Celts. The Celts were also very matriarchal. They were equal.
mhm.
Um, and so when the Romans captured a group of Celts, they brought them to Rome to meet Caesar and I think it was Agrippa, his wife. They went right past Caesar and went to Agrippa because they assumed that she was the leader.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, look at
Marched right past him.
that.
Take that, Caesar. Yeah.
What about
So,
I'm interested, since I'm Danish, as you know.
mm,
Have you looked into women Vikings?
oh
Yeah.
yes.
And
Oh,
what
yes.
stories are there? Because yeah, I mean, that has been a little bit vague as well, the information that there is out there. Were there
Oh, yeah.
really female Vikings
I
or
had I had a discussion with somebody last year about that, because it just came out that, oh, they found a grave with a woman with a sword. It's like, oh, whoopee.
yeah.
It's only one, you know. But and they're saying, yeah, well, that's one, right? It's a one-off, but
Mhm.
I don't think so. There's a King Torbjörg, I think, Björg, in Uppsala. She wanted to be called king when she
Oh,
became queen, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, that's one woman. Then there's the story of Rusla, Princess Rusla. She became a pirate, and to get it back at her father and brother and stuff. And so you find these women who, and some of them had women crews on their ships as well, and just made life miserable for the Danish kings or the Norwegian kings and stuff too. I'm trying to remember if she was the one or if it was another one that her brother was. She felt that she would have been a better queen than her brother being a king, but her father wanted a boy or a man. So she took to pirating and made life really, really, really hard for them. And then, but she met her brother on some island and they fought and stuff like that. And he captured her and had her killed by beating her with oars from the ships. Yeah, that was the only way that they could keep them down. And that's the other thing, is that when you hear about like Romans meeting the Celts, you know, and they met the women, there's one quote of some Roman general saying, you know, that's a whole army of Romans would not be able to defeat a single Celt if he had his wife by his side.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So these women, they just went in fighting like right up in your face, and they didn't care if they got cut, you know, they just went right in. Or
Yeah.
they had spears, you know, they had different weapons too. But they were feared, very
Yeah.
feared.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Dahomey tribe of African women, they were feared. I mean, awesome women. And in Thailand, Siam at the time, the emperor was protected by an army of 1,000 of the most beautiful women, handpicked out of the kingdom, trained up as assassins. And their job was to protect the king and his family and the palace. But
Yeah.
they were awesome. So you know, you hear about these and like, why have they been lost in time?
Mm.
And my mission now is to make them known, just as common as any other male.
As anyone else. Yeah.
Yeah, as anyone else. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the only way to change the narrative on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Mm.
completely agree. And I think that's also the key for many things when we talk about feminism, for instance, that it's not about overdoing men. It's not about a competition of who's better, or
No, exactly.
we want to win something, or we want to put more focus on women than on men. No, not at all. It's actually just about having more or less the same opportunities, the
Yeah,
same focus,
yeah,
the same
yeah.
attention, setting history straight. You know, it's very interesting what you tell us about the women warriors, and how they've
Mm.
kind of been forgotten over history, because in our business, in the film business that you also work in, the same thing is happening with female directors.
Yeah.
You know, some of the first filmmakers ever were actually female, and there's a great documentary by a female director called Pamela
Yeah.
Green, and she made a film about Alice Guy. It's called Be
Yeah.
Natural, and Alice Guy was one of the first filmmakers ever in the world. And she went on to direct hundreds of films, and she was a producer as well. And she formed her own production company, you know, and nobody knows her. Nobody knows her films. Nobody knows her name. But if you say Brother Lumiere, everybody knows
Yeah.
who that is.
Yeah.
And many of the first male film directors people will know. And, I've studied film history as well because I've gone to film school, and I know all these names, and I've never, ever heard the name Alice Guy.
That is
Never
amazing.
until now. Yeah.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. And it's amazing when you go back and you look at history books and her name is just not there. Her name is not there.
Why?
Exactly.
Why?
I mean, one of the explanations really is that back in those days, obviously, it was more common for women to, it wasn't common at all for them to have work. And in the beginning, film was viewed a little bit as a kind of a funny little hobby, like a fun new thing, this camera that came out, and nobody really took it seriously. And it wasn't until it started generating quite a lot of money that men realized, okay, there's money here, there's business, there's power. And so they pushed the women out.
Wow.
At that point, as there weren't women really working enough to be like, we didn't have female film critics, female authors, female, and all these positions that could work together in creating a different narrative. So all film history books, pretty much all of them were written by men, all articles in the newspapers. I mean, everywhere men were working and were in higher positions than women, so they were able to control the narrative. Right. So this is okay. But now we can go back, and actually I highly recommend this documentary because it's very thorough. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I heard about it, and I've kind of researched a little bit of Alice Guy. Yeah. Yeah. One of the very first stunt women ever was a Danish woman in the 1920s.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
she
wow.
was flying high on a plane, and crawling up buildings. And yeah, I was interviewed I didn't know that. And I was interviewed for an article about her. Just being a stunt woman. And I had to go on YouTube and then research her. It's just amazing. Yeah.
But I mean, I think it's wonderful that there is actually still a lot of things to discover, right? So, I mean, it's sad that it has to be discovered now, but it's nice for us to know that there are many things to discover and that we can bring out, just like you're doing now. So I really, really appreciate the work that you're doing now with these women warriors. I can't wait to read your book. When are you and possibly see your documentary? Are you going to do like updates or anything on social media, or you have a website?
Yes. And the goal is to have the documentary done about the same time as the book, so they kind of use each other. And I'm looking for October. In October, I'm turning 60. And
this year?
Yes.
Oh, wow, but that's soon.
Can't believe it yet. So
that's exciting.
I better get on it, huh? Now, let's see. I hope so. That's my goal. And when we were talking before, I just want to mention this one woman here, or this person. It was on television last week, talking about in Afghanistan. There's a tribe that's trying to keep the Taliban out of their territory. So, they have patrols and all this. And the way that they had, this reporter had described this person is like, it's this person who's a man in the day and the woman at night. And I immediately thought, well, that's a man who likes to dress up as women, right? That's cool. It turns out that it's a woman who, because she didn't have any brothers, or her brother died. So in that tribal tradition, if you don't have a son, then you dress up one of your daughters or your daughter as a boy. So she grew up in boys' clothing.
Yeah.
And so she feels very comfortable in it. So in the daytime, she's out there patrolling with her rifle from World War I, and she's accepted by the men. So she participates in all their meetings, and and help making decisions. And then she has to sleep with the women because she is a woman ultimately, right? So,
Right.
and then she tells them what has been discussed at these meetings.
And the
So,
men know that she's a woman?
mhm. The
Okay, so
men,
they accept it. They accept that she's
yes,
dressed up as a
yeah. Her name is Hukmina Siddiqui. I remember that. So, and I just thought that was again though me being challenged again with my indoctrination,
yeah.
right, of what's what. And I wanted to have a subtitle for my book and of Women Warriors, and that is, why don't we have more male nurses? It goes the other way. You know,
Mm.
why we have to break society's norms and just do
Yeah.
what you're best at. Like 3,000 years ago, in the Mongolian tribes, they just took the kids from the age of 3, started teaching them all the different, you know, duties for the tribe. And okay, he's good at making food, he's going to be in the hearth. She's good at riding, she's going to take care of the cattle on horseback, you know, or fighting. So it had no gender
Yeah.
whatsoever. Question about gender. It was, you did what you were good at because the tribe has to survive,
Yeah.
right? So it's all about the survival of the species, so to
Yeah.
speak. And that's what it should be. Let's do what you're good at.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be wonderful if somehow we can get to that point at some point.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, just being at Mills College, at the women's college, it was like I was really confronted with that whole thing of women being called girls.
Hmm.
So we were really adamant about always saying, I'm a woman,
Yeah.
you know, I'm
Yeah.
a woman, you're a man, period. Not a girl. Yeah.
No,
It
no,
can be
you're right.
endearing, but yeah.
I
And,
mean,
and
that's
it
what,
has to start there, changing the narrative. It has to start with our words, you know?
yeah. Yeah, because I really believe that language has a lot to do with it as well. I mean, language is
Mm-hmm.
such a big part of us as humans. It's our way of communicating, and it's
Yeah.
pretty much what, like, that's one of the big differences between us and animals, right? Even if they have other ways of communicating, but this language that we have, that we can speak words and put
Yes.
sentences together. Um, that is very powerful, and I think
It
it's
is.
very, like, for the brain, it's really
Mm.
impactful. And so to have these phrases or words repeated over and over again as you grow up, and you have a certain, um, you have something attached to these words, right? So
Yeah.
you
There's a
have
feeling,
either,
there's a connotation. Yep.
yeah. And so we all know that, like, oh, don't cry like a girl, or run like a girl, or fight like
Yeah.
a girl. They all have a negativity,
Yeah.
attached to the word, right? And I don't know if you saw this. It's some years ago. I remember there was this little, I don't know if it was a documentary or a little spot, where they asked, it was set up as a casting, and they
Yeah.
asked women, adult women, they told them, okay, so we'd like to see you run like a girl, run like a little girl. And almost all of them would do like this silly, stupid little run, you know? And then they would have kids coming in, and they would ask them to do the same. So, like, young girls, and they would ask them to do the same, run like a girl, or hit a ball like a girl, or anything like a girl. And they would just put all their passion and energy into it, and, you know, like, be really, they were just running like, and it was so funny, and it was such a great example and way of really, like, visually showing
Yeah.
how we are completely indoctrinated with this, with our language, and how little girls
Yeah.
still haven't reached that point yet where they
Mm-hmm.
understand that running like a girl is actually something negative.
Yeah.
You know, that's something that when we get to adulthood, we realize that, because we heard it so many times.
Yeah.
But you, as maybe a 10-year-old girl, you still don't understand that, and you just go by your heart and what you know and what you feel for.
Yeah.
And I thought it was such a, it was very nicely put together, and it really
Mm.
illustrated that,
Yeah.
the
Well, I
power
have.
of words.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yes. It holds people down. I was just thinking about my husband has 3 kids, and 2 of them have had children, so we have grandchildren, and 4 of them are girls actually, and the 2 oldest, they're like soon 12, I guess, and 10, and the oldest one, I remember her coming to see me perform. I used to do these. I did come back to the museum. I have to just
Oh,
say
okay.
that the one who fired me, he retired and all that, and one of my colleagues took over setting up all this entertainment at the museum, and they said, we want Tina because we know she's the best,
Yeah.
and to create these big edutainment, as it's called. I brought edutainment to Denmark as well. And so we do shows that are based on historical facts, but entertaining. And so I always made a point of playing a man with a mustache or whatever, but always kind of letting the audience know, I know I'm a woman playing a man, and I know you know, and yes,
Yeah.
that's the way it is. To kind of, change the narrative, just let them know.
Yeah.
And then tell them afterwards, women did do this.
Yeah.
But anyway, my oldest one, she came she was two and a half. And I thought she would be really scared because it was inside. It was really clanging and banging shields and swords. And, she was in the front row. And my husband said she just sat there. And then when I came out in the beginning with a mustache and stuff, she just went, "Is that Tina?"
Oh.
So sweet. And
Yeah.
then afterwards, we always had the kids, we had the weapons out, and the kids could pick them up and ask questions. The kids were gone, and I was going to pack up, and she went straight to the shield and a sword, and I was going to help her to put it on. Yeah, she put it on exactly the way you should do it, and the sword, and she dragged them over to her morpha, to her husband. It was just all happy. Look what I have, and I went, yes, yes, yes. That's the way it should be, right?
That's great. Yeah, of course. I mean, that's exactly the way it should be. Like women, little girls, they don't necessarily have to play with dolls, and guys have to play with trains.
No.
If a boy picks up a doll, then he should feel absolutely free to play with that.
And put a dress on.
Yeah, definitely.
Exactly.
I think, Tina, I think we're going to be wrapping up now. This has been super exciting and interesting to talk to you. I know we could go on for hours and hours and hours. I want to ask you if you have anything like here at the end that you wanted to mention or talk about. And if not, then please let us know. How can we follow you, or for more information about your book? Your website is
actionart.dk.
actionart.dk.
Yes.
Right. And will you be updating us on
I will have to do that. Yeah, I'm getting my energy back again, so I'm going to start doing all those things. But so we'll see. We're going to start this week on this documentary thing. So
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's exciting. It really is. We'll see where it takes us.
Wishing you all the best.
Thank you.
Hoping you're getting better and you're going in the right direction with your recovery. And of course, all the best of luck with your documentary and your book. We're going to be staying in contact, so I will know. I definitely want to read that book.
Me too. Yeah. I'll send you an article.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Right.
Tina.
Thank you, Louise. You take care and good luck with everything.
Thank you.